see a few familiar faces out in the audience, but for those of you who do not know me, I'm Scott Nestler. I'm a faculty member in the IT Analytics and Operations Department in Mendoza, and together with Brett Beasley here in the front row from the Deloitte Center for Ethical Leadership, we put this session together here today as part of Ethics Week 2018. Up here on the raised platform, dais, I'm not sure what to call it, we have three guest speakers today. As you see, we have the two Alexes. That would be Alex Liggins in the middle, who's a Notre Dame grad from 2015, and I believe she was an English major. Yeah. We have Alex Sednai, who I understand has a music degree from Indiana and spent some time living in Nashville, which is where he learned to code, before coming back to South Bend. And then Brian Kubicki, who is the general counsel at Gibson Insurance, and very involved in the local community in some education initiatives. And we asked them to come in today and talk about how critical it is to put resources and effort and energy into education in a community. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Brian.
First of all, thank you all for coming out. Hopefully we live up to your expectations. I'm not sure we knew quite what to expect. I should also confess I'm also an English major, so you can appropriately tune out as you may see fit, since we're all kind of arts and letters type majors. Having said that, I actually think one of the nice things about business is the way that it intersects with a lot of different disciplines, and that you can bring a lot of different perspectives to business. Before I kind of dig into the meat of our presentation or kick us off that way, how many of you are here? I assume most of you are students in the business college. So if I could get some volunteers, I'm just kind of interested in what folks are majoring in. So if anyone wants to volunteer, if not, I'll start calling on people just like class. Yeah.
Us three are in the business school at Mendoza. We are in graduate accounting.
Graduate accounting, okay. Why did you guys go into accounting?
Because I couldn't do finance.
Hey, like looking for a job? You had a propensity for numbers? What?
It seemed to fit, at least for me, like it made sense. Like
Started in like general business and then found the class that we liked best.
Okay, cool. Somebody else? Do we have any other than accounting majors? Not all at once, really, seriously.
All of you are accounting?
All right. Everybody's accounting?
No, you.
Did you? Go for it.
I'm business analytics and fee studies.
Okay.
Awesome.
Nice.
Why business analytics?
I just thought that it would be cool to have like a data analytics kind of thing with like a little bit of management involved too.
Okay, we'll hold off on the peace studies for a moment. Anybody else? Anybody like marketing or finance? Yeah?
Marketing.
Yeah? And why did you choose marketing?
Just interested in selling, and I think that that's a good background to sell to people.
Okay, good. Anybody else want to really chomping at the bit to brag about what they're doing?
Brian, I'm willing to bet we have a lot of sophomores out here. If you're a sophomore, raise your hand.
Whoa.
They
Oh, wow.
haven't decided their majors.
Okay.
The process thereof, so
Okay.
that might be part of why you're not getting an answer.
Can I get a volunteer from a sophomore then? I've got some different questions for you if you haven't decided. Yes, sir, in the blue there.
I thought you were going to ask, I thought you were like volunteer for you to ask for something.
I am. So here's the question. You're a sophomore. What are some of the things you're thinking about as you're thinking about what you want to major in the College of Business? What are some of the things that are priorities for you?
I guess like what field you want to go in after graduation, like what like gives you the most opportunities, like the most like job opportunities after, and, like just what interests you the most.
Okay, excellent. So one of the things I didn't really hear from anybody is people choosing business out of a desire to serve mankind or humankind. Did anybody choose business, their business major for that reason? Okay, or thinking about it, at least prioritizing that, yeah?
Well, I think that's kind of more like an end goal, but in the immediate future, like you need more of the business background, like in like accounting, and then working in like a public accounting firm. That wasn't my end goal, but like serving the general public will be a part of that. And so my end goal will be like more towards that.
Sure.
Of like
So I kind of raised this point because the information that we received when we were first asked to do this and talk about this kind of highlighted Cardinal O'Hara in, I think it was 1923, 1923, wrote an essay, "The primary function of commerce is service to mankind." You guys agree with that as business majors? Do you see that as the primary purpose of commerce? All right, we got a little bit of work to do with these Notre Dame folks. I don't see anybody jumping up to say that. And it struck me too, because that's not generally what I think about. And when Alex and I sat down to talk about it, that wasn't something that we necessarily, that leapt to the fore when we think about business. And at least my engagement with business, sometimes it's hard to see where that service to humankind comes in. But I think there's some real value, and the reason I kind of wanted to start this way, I think there's some real value in orienting yourself in that way. And almost no matter what you do, not just in business, but definitely in business, because it can get easy to be distracted in the world of business by other things in ways that can kind of knock you off and knock your business off those goals. And one of the ways that as we talked about it, we kind of articulated that if you're working for a business and you want that business to function at the highest levels of ethics, you really need that organization-wide culture that's oriented to service to humankind. And so one of the valuable pieces about this week is it allows you to sit back and think about that. That doesn't mean you can't think of the reasons that you've been thinking about going into business and what you hope to do in business. But I think it's really important to kind of keep yourself oriented in this way so that we can seek to avoid some of the less savory things that have happened in the recent past around business and decisions from Enron to Volkswagen to Wells Fargo. And so we also thought about just some questions you can ask yourself. And these are questions that I think each of us has asked ourselves at various points in our careers. And as you listen to our stories, hopefully you'll hear a little bit of that. These three questions: how do my actions serve humankind? So how do your actions, what you do in your job, how does my job serve humankind? And how does my business serve humankind? And I think there are different ways to look at this. And you can be doing something that seems really kind of trivial, but you can still understand it in ways that you work for a business that truly values its employees, for example, and gives them good jobs, good benefits, and will stand by them. That's a way that businesses can serve humankind. But there are many, many ways that it happens. And as an attorney, I definitely relate to the accountants from that standpoint that part of what we do is to serve others. And oftentimes, if you're a corporate attorney, you're not necessarily serving the individuals. You're not in those kind of more glamorous cases or more glamorous projects, but you still have that opportunity to serve in a way that allows business to benefit our society in long-term and meaningful ways. So with that kind of background, Alex and I think just wanted to give a little bit of context to the stories that we'll tell you. I am going to turn it over to Alex and let them tell you the really awesome story of South Bend Code School.
So I think that those questions that Brian had up there, at least I think it's kind of true for all three of us, we didn't initially come at when we were trying to find, that nice, perfect mashup between what your interests are and then what career it is that you're going to be pursuing. So like for me, I was an English major. Before that, I was pre-med. And so then I was pre-med because I wanted to become a doctor because I wanted to help people. And I went and I visited my advisor my junior year here, and she asked, how are your classes going? And I told him I hate them all. And so she said that's not what college is supposed to be like. And so for me, I was shocked because I thought that, well, if my end goal is to be able to help people, my entire life I've thought that I had to get at that by becoming a doctor. And so I added on the English major because that was a way for me I was at junior year, so it kind of felt really dumb to just drop the pre-med. So I added on instead a concentration that I did feel passionate about and would enjoy. And I still, though, wound up 3 years later in coding. So the mashup did not quickly happen. I started tutoring at local schools, and I met a lot of high school seniors who did not feel like they had very much opportunity post-graduation of a lot of the students I was working with. They had discounted college as an option for themselves, whether that be grades of thinking they couldn't get admitted into a school, or financial constraints of being first generation and not knowing really what scholarships are or necessarily how you apply for them or how you qualify for them. But for me, I knew that coding, you did not have to have a college degree to be able to enter the workforce and still have that profitable career. And so that was kind of what led me to South Bend Code School. And I know after Alex is to tell his story, we would definitely be able to explain a little bit more of like what in the world South Bend Code School is, and what we do there. But that kind of like path for me of getting towards that mashup of being able to pursue what I'm interested in, have a career that I feel proud of, and then it's still being able to serve mankind and me being able to feel comfortable with that and proud of it and feel like I'm doing it in a positive way, did not just necessarily come naturally.
Yeah, so my story is probably a little bit different. As mentioned earlier, I went to music school. I went to Indiana University and went to the Jacobs School of Music there and studied recording arts. And then I moved to Nashville, Tennessee after that and did the whole struggling artist thing in Nashville. It turned out that wasn't paying the bills. A friend kind of just off the cuff one day asked if I had ever tried coding. My response to him at the time was, "What is that?" And then I started to teach myself and just ate coding up and started building stuff. I joined a boot camp in Nashville. 2 months into that boot camp, I was able to work with a team to build an application that used public city building permit data and U.S. Census data to predict where gentrification might happen next in the city of Nashville. And that kind of just put me on a rocket to coding being my life, and technology, really. I think that for a lot of us, and I'm going to lump most of us in the millennials category, I think that's a safe thing to do. When you look at sort of the I guess landscape of where our lives are at, we don't have a big war we're fighting. We're not, trying to fight some big ethical battle in a physical sense on a battlefield every day. We're going to be the generation that tries to figure out how do we do things the right way. Not saying that previous generations did things the wrong way. This is our benefit to be able to fight these battles. When you look at people like Elon Musk and, how are we going to figure out climate change, whether you agree with his approach of trying to go to another planet as the right one or the wrong one, he's trying to come up with a solution for it. I think those are the battles, at least from my opinion so far, that our generation is going to get to fight, right? So as you guys are looking, like Alex said, a lot of you are in college and maybe you're here considering what's going to be my most profitable career trajectory. What degree or what major is going to get me the best job because I need to pay off student loan debt, or I'm stuck in this mentality of I've got to get the best job so I can make the most money. I think with Code School, one of the things that Alex and I have been fortunate enough to experience is that doesn't necessarily need to be the mentality. We're doing a really good thing, and our mentality towards approaching business and approaching life is do the right thing and the right things will happen. And I think that's worked out pretty well for us so far. We're in a business that's growing faster than almost we can keep up with. We have hired 2 new people in the new year already, and we're not even, through the second month. So, and we're looking at a third right now. So, I think that's kind of the question as we talk about ethics and education and where things are going is what battle do you want to fight? It's not going to be Vietnam. It's not going to be World War II, right? It doesn't have to be something that people are dying in. But you should probably find something to commit your life to that you're going to be proud of. And what is that thing going to be? I think it makes a lot of sense that that thing helps people in some way. I think a lot of people, for me, it comes down to being a superhero, right? Like when I was a little kid, when I was in kindergarten, if you would have asked me what I want to be when I grow up, I would have said a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. I even tried to color myself green one day with markers. That was fun. But I mean, that possibility isn't that far off, right? You guys have this time now to learn awesome skills, whether it's engineering or business or whatever it is. If I were in your shoes, today, I was there 10 years ago, but if I were in your shoes today, I would be thinking, what can I learn that I can help the most people with?
How did you guys come together to start South Bend Code School?
Okay.
Well, so our first program was at the Robinson Community Learning Center. And what we did there was we had 19 students who had never coded before. Pretty much like even before that, what happened was Alex, Chris, we have our third co-founder named Chris, and myself came together and all realized we wanted to create tech education for kids. That there were already a lot of programs out there for really like younger kids, but not so many for high schoolers that were age appropriate, where they were building real tech solutions where they could get an internship or a job from. So what we did was we created a web development program. And we knew that web was really good as a starting for someone who's starting out into coding because your deliverables can happen really quickly. So for kids who are maybe thinking that coding's not for them because they're maybe thinking you have to be really good at math or really good at science. And so then they're discounting themselves automatically. If instead we could create a program where they code on the very first day and it works and then they realize like, okay, I can do this, then that would be a win. And so we did our first program at the Robinson Center, and we had 19 students who had never coded before, and in 4 weeks? 5 weeks, they built 23 web applications, 4 of which were civic applications promoting nonviolence in the city of South Bend. And then we thought, how do we make this an even bigger win for them? So we put on a community event where different members of the community who they built these apps for came. Mayor Pete visited, and so he was there. News teams came there and filmed them. And so then all of these middle schoolers and high schoolers who had never coded a day before in their lives, after just 5 weeks of sticking with this kind of stuff, were being recognized by their community. And then they also then gave something back to their community. And so like that was a powerful thing for them too, of realizing that they could create change at like 12 years old. And so then we asked, how do we make that even bigger experience for them? And so Chris, actually, we're sitting in his kitchen one day, and so he said, we take them to Google. That would be it. For a kid, if they saw themselves at Google, then automatically they're going to realize for whether they want to be a developer or not doesn't even matter. Instead, they're going to realize that they are taking themselves seriously and society is able to take them seriously, and the number of wins that they could end up accomplishing from that point forward, it's just going to automatically increase. And so we did it. So we took the kids to Google in Chicago, and they spent the entire day there. They toured the facilities. They got to see just all of the different perks and different things that come with working at a company like that. And then they also then got to meet some of the developers and realize that the languages that they were just learning are being used right there. So it kind of all clicked. And so after that program, we had 13 inquiries from other organizations in the community to bring our program there. And so then something that we had just like thought of, South Bend Code School, was like finally a real thing. And so now we've been doing that for 3 years straight almost. It'll be 3 years in May. But that was us pretty much like seeing a problem that we cared about, not knowing how we were gonna make any money off of it. Like our first 2 programs we did completely for free. And turning it into something then that we were still able to be proud of. And now we're fortunate enough that we're able to support ourselves off of this.
So you guys you are not a nonprofit.
We're not.
So your business is for profit.
Yeah.
So we're a for-profit, so we are an LLC, and we're doing pretty well. I think, we get asked a lot, like, why for-profit over nonprofit? Was your decision there? And there were a lot of reasons. I think the ability to move quickly and execute decisively was a big reason. We don't have a board that we have to have conferences with and make decisions with. But also, a lot of you probably don't know this, but St. Joe County has more nonprofits per capita than any other county in the U.S. And so someone told us, good luck trying to jump into the same grant pool as all the other nonprofits in St. Joe County. So we kind of talked with a few of them and got the vibe, and it seemed like it'd be better to go for profit and do partnership programs with those nonprofits. And that's worked out pretty well. again, it comes down to, and maybe you guys have run into this, or maybe you haven't, because most of you are sophomores, but when you think about business and, you know, nonprofits versus for-profits, it seems like nonprofits are the people who are out there trying to do like the fluffy work, right? Like they're trying to do the good stuff, and you know, if you're for-profit, you're all business, and it comes down to that bottom line, and you know, are you in the black, are you in the red? I think that, again, I'm going to say that this is kind of a millennial thing, but really blurring that line is something we're seeing a lot more of lately. And really, when it comes down to it, for-profit and nonprofit, you still have to get dollars in the door, right? So whether it's grant dollars, donation dollars, you know, dollars that come from selling a widget, you still have to make money, right? People at nonprofits still make money. You know, we were in a meeting with the Logan Center the other day, and they've got like 20 people running around an office in there, and all of those people are making a living. So, you know, at the end of the day, a dollar is a dollar, and how you bring that dollar in is really irrelevant.
So you also are, I know you're working in Fort Wayne now?
Yeah, so in the last year, we've expanded into Fort Wayne. So we have, it's still called South Bend Code School, Fort Wayne. We have a location opening in Elkhart next month, in March. And then we have another undisclosed location that we're probably going to be opening this fall.
So question for you guys. If you had tried to start this in Chicago, do you think you'd be where you are right now?
I don't. I think it's cool now, the path that we took, because now we're having conversations in Chicago. But one thing that's been pretty awesome about South Bend is your ability to have an impact. So like for me, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I went to Notre Dame, and I stayed here afterwards, something where someone had asked me freshman year if I was ever going to do that, the answer automatically would have been no. But Mayor Pete has this really awesome quote that we butcher every time we say it, but the meaning is still there. So like just catch the meaning part of that. He says, South Bend is small enough to be able to create change, but big enough for that impact matters. And that's kind of exactly what it felt like, of that. If you don't know the right person here, you're gonna meet someone who does know that person. And so everyone's willing to take that first meeting of talk with you. And I don't know that it would have been the same reaction in Chicago, just because there are so many more people and everyone is already doing their own thing. And I mean, tech education is already recognized there as well. And so that's starting to happen a lot more here in our area too. But it would have just been, I feel like, a completely different game.
Yeah, I think, you know, South Bend represents a lot of things to a lot of different people, but one of the, I guess, new things that we're going to have to start thinking about is Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, whatever it is, those big cities already have a lot of things. I think a lot of the divide in general in America right now comes from the difference between cities like those and cities like ours. Right, you have a lot, maybe more of a blue-collar working class traditionally in some of these smaller towns that are a population of 100,000 or less. You know, it's a different mentality. It's a different type of person. It's a different type of customer. How are you going to deal with all of that? I think, you know, in Chicago, you know, you have the density there to, like, if you light a match, it's going to catch flame, right? And your fire is going to start burning out of control pretty quickly. A city like South Bend, you have time and sort of the cushion to refine that match a little bit before you strike the flame. And then if you make something good enough and it works in South Bend, the size is such that people in Chicago might want to know more about it, or Indianapolis, or Nashville, or, you know, wherever it may be. I think that, you know, South Bend is the front line, right? It's for people who want to do stuff. I think other cities across America who are of the same population size, and it's the same way, right? There's interesting things happening in these places. Don't rule them out as you guys are going through college and looking for places to have careers, right? There are a lot of cool cities doing cool things that maybe aren't the capital city of a state, or, you know, a city with a population size of 1 million or more.
What, and I just kind of want to clarify for everybody too, you do not have a physical school that students attend 5 days a week. You're a program, you partner with other organizations, right?
Yeah, so we have a location near downtown South Bend at one of the Studebaker renovation buildings, and students are able to come there after school 4 days a week and be able to learn how to code, whether that's by them building their own video games or their own websites. But then we do also partner with schools and organizations during the day. So like we'll bring coding as a part of like the school's curriculum and things like that. So like right now we're at Montessori Edison Lakes and we're working with their 2nd through 8th graders.
Okay. We're going to have some questions at the end, and I think we kind of covered everything, but if there's more to throw in, don't hesitate. And I'm going to go ahead and talk, and this is probably the less interesting story. We'll wrap it up nicely, though, and I also just want to thank Alex for not saying she chose English because it was easy. She's an English major.
She also did pre-medical studies.
We talked about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, my wife is a sociology major, so I always have that over her, that, you know. Anyway, I won't say anything else because that may get back to her. Some pictures of the code school, too. So these are some of the kids. Anything in particular you guys want to say about any of those pictures before?
I mean, no, it's, cool. There's diversity. We've worked with over 1,000 kids in the last couple years. We've had 47% female participation, 56% underrepresented minority participation. I'm trying to think what else. We do a pretty good balance between low-income students. I think we're about 50-50 split there. We won a couple awards in the last year. Alex won the Women of Color in STEM award. She got to share the stage with women from NASA and IBM and cool places like that. And then we won an award from Code.org. We got to go to San Francisco and accept that award with Sheryl Sandberg and Peggy Johnson and other big names in tech. We've had 14 kids get paid internships with tech companies over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And 14 went to college last fall. Some of the stats.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, so my story is a little different, and it's, I think, a different way to kind of look at how you can impact humankind in maybe a more traditional business. So I currently am general counsel with Gibson. We're an insurance agency. We've got about 150 employees. We've got do we have 5 offices? I know we've got a Kalamazoo office. We have 4 offices in Indiana, and we're working on growing Kalamazoo. So we're in a number of different locations, and we've been on a fairly aggressive growth trajectory. So all of that is very interesting. But by way of background, I was raised by 2 teachers, and teachers in a small town just up the road in St. Joe. They're actually here today. This is what happens. You can be 45 and your parents still show up for your stuff. Anyway, so raised by 2 teachers, known in the community because it's a relatively small town, very highly respected folks. That kind of civil service aspect to things and truly kind of valued and appreciated as a profession back then. And I can even my dad's birthday was Friday, and he received from some now adult young men, brothers, they sent him a little trophy for his birthday, commemorating him as like the best coach. And this was he taught at St. Joe when I was alive, but he started in Lakeshore, and this was back from his days in Lakeshore before he and my mom had started dating or got married. And so that's 40 plus years, and he still receives those accolades. I know at points he's gotten letters from folks, again, decades after the fact, saying, I had a rough kind of upbringing. I was a tough kid, but your class, you always treated me with respect. And you had been in the military. I decided to go into the military because of you. I wanted you to know what a difference you've made in my life. And so this is the household I grew up in. My mom, for her part, also a teacher, but a guidance counselor, and she was working. Oftentimes, I had a very good friend of mine who was just going to stick around, go to community college, wasn't sure quite what he wanted to do. My mom's like, no, Ben, you have to go to visit this college, and we'll get you over there, get set up, and next thing you know, Ben's got scholarship, and he's heading off to a four-year school. My mom would also help kids through, she wasn't a social worker or a therapist, but she often was that front line when kids came in with problems. So again, just making a direct impact and having a direct impact on those kids that they deal with. And so this is the house I grow up in. My brother is a finance major from Western Michigan, goes down and gets a job doing sales, selling airtime on radio. I don't really know what I want to do because I'm an English major, which is I know we're not the only ones that don't know what we want to do, but it's kind of our cross to bear. So I fall backwards into law school, and next thing you know, I'm in private practice. I'm a lawyer. Can you imagine, like, if you do those, they do those surveys of, like, least respected professions? Yeah, salespeople and lawyers are right up there. Well, that apparently wasn't good enough for us. The shame wasn't enough for my parents. So 4 years ago, I started at Gibson, Schleppin Insurance, as our president would say. And then 2 years ago, my brother opened an all-state agency down in Houston. So we decided we hadn't cast enough shame upon my parents' name. We had to go even deeper and go into insurance. So a very difficult industry from a respect standpoint. So I say all that just to kind of lay out that I still struggle with that. How does that fit? What is it that when I ask myself those three questions, and I completely understand that insurance has a major impact on people's lives. We can own the cars we own, we can own the houses we own because of insurance. Businesses can grow at a rate they wouldn't be able to if they had to set aside money to brace for that true kind of catastrophe. Insurance allows people to do and has a positive impact on society overall. Despite the reputation. But for me, there's still that kind of background of my parents making that direct impact and bringing their skills to bear in a way. And so it was also very important to me that I work for an organization that gives me that flexibility, that encourages that involvement in community. And the way that I've sought that out is really through kind of board involvement. My first board that I got involved with was South Bend Education Foundation. My daughter brought home from school a little flyer that was a kind of thank a teacher gift from South Bend Education Foundation. And I've been looking for an opportunity to kind of get more involved in the community. I saw that, I went in, this is when I was in private practice. I went in, I pulled up their website, printed off a list of their board members, walked it down to one of my partner's offices who was really well connected in South Bend, said, do you know anybody? I want to be on this board. I want to know more about it. And he said, well, I'm actually in Rotary with Lou Lapierre. So he introduced the two of us. Next thing you know, I'm sitting with Lou Lapierre, the then president of the board, and Susan Warner, the executive director, and they've offered me a board spot. And I learned more. I spent 9 years on that board, 3 as president, and I learned more in that time, and had, again, was able to bring the skills and experience that I developed in schooling and in private practice to bear with an organization. But you get to see the difference you make with kids at that point. We raised a lot of money for a reading program that we put into South Bend schools. Continue to work and improve. Took on a mentoring program as well. And while my involvement was not even administrative, was governance in a lot of ways. Nonprofits need that. They need people who have skills and are willing to engage. And so I was very fortunate to be able to do that. At some point during my time there, I got a call from Amy Collier. Girls on the Run is a national program. She had been involved with a local site for Girls on the Run where she lived before she moved to South Bend. She was looking to start one here, reaching out to various people, trying to figure out who she should talk to. Steve Camilleri, who lived with me in Cavanaugh here at Notre Dame, suggested that she talk to me. So next thing you know, I'm on the founding board for our local chapter of Girls on the Run Michiana. And again, that program resonated with me. Obviously, South Bend Education Foundation, my kids are at South Bend schools, my parents were teachers. Girls on the Run, the resonance for me is I had a daughter about the age, and I can track it. One of the things Girls on the Run talks about is at around the age of 12, boys continue, their self-esteem, it just kind of keeps going. Girls' self-esteem drops off at about that age. And I saw it with my own kids. My 12-year-old son, he's now 15, but when he was 11, 12, I used to say he had more unearned ego. That kid had done nothing to deserve how highly he thought of himself. But boy, did he, right? My daughter, on the other hand, was this precocious, outgoing, wonderful little girl, and to see her hit the age of 12 and just shrink. It continues today, and that program is designed to make a difference. I'm not out there coaching the girls. I'm not out there having that direct impact. But I had the opportunity to be on the board, to found that board, help get the message out around Girls on the Run. Again, just a very, very kind of meaningful experience from that standpoint. The leadership program around here, you send people out, organizations will send people through the leadership program. And it does 3 things. It kind of connects you to the community. It gets you to understand South Bend and Michiana a little bit better. The second thing it does is it connects you to organizations that are involved in the community, doing good things, primarily nonprofits. And the third thing it does is you get to know these 45 people. You walk away with more connections and a network, and people that have a meaningful invested interest in the community. I went through that program, then was subsequently asked to be on the board. In the last 3 or 4 years, we spun off from the chamber. We're now standing independent. Our long-term executive director, for personal reasons, decided she needed to move on to other things. So she resigned. She didn't really resign. In the near term, we hired an executive director. It wasn't a good fit. Everybody agreed, parted amicably. And so now we had to kind of adjust it. So we've just been in this scramble mode. And I've gotten to sit firsthand and see it. And again, a program that meant a lot to me from a personal standpoint, the ability to kind of connect to the community and the strength that it brings to the community. And so that's a board that I'm currently on. I'm vice president of that board, and that has an education component as well. It has a youth leadership program. And we're looking to continue to grow that. How can we grow that? What else can we do next? So we get the opportunity to be creative with that program. My involvement with education also led me to involvement with South Bend, the regional chamber. They have an education advisory committee, and I've sat on that for a number of years, and our long-serving chairman has stepped aside, and Jeff Ray, who was here yesterday, asked if I would slide into that chairman position. And this is an organization that is representing businesses, but it gives you the opportunity to intersect between the public education in particular, and the needs of the business community and what the business community needs. And again, I go back to sitting around the table with two teachers. I can speak teachers' language. I'm not a teacher. I can speak that language. I understand where they come from. But I'm also in the business world, and there's this kind of difficulty that public education and business have had in the past. Public education rightly feels like people tell them, think they can do their job better. And so they get told by a lot of people, this is what you should do, this is how you should do things, this is what you're not doing right, and that type of thing. So there's a defensiveness, and I think well-earned defensiveness from public education in general. The business community, when they want to help, they'll approach public education, they'll approach schools and say, how can we help? And the easy answer for schools is give us money. And that's really simplifying this, but for a lot of businesses, that's kind of like, whoa, that's not what we're offering. And so you have had historically this kind of chasm. And I think what the chamber is able to do is help kind of bridge that. And we've got some really, really good people on that council, and we're working to kind of make that a more influential council. Again, the opportunity to be creative and have a meaningful long-term impact in the community. Center for the Homeless is a little more direct. I mentioned Steve Camilleri. He's the executive director for Center for the Homeless. He asked me to dance in Dancing with Our Stars, their fundraiser. I idiotically said yes, and now I can't get out of it, so I'm going to have to dance. But again, that ability to try to fundraise and connect with folks in a way that's meaningful for people in our community that are often overlooked. The Center for the Homeless does really, really, really good work. And it's tough work because there is an impression about the homeless in the community. And so they have to kind of fight that in many ways. But they are on that treadmill of needing money, grant money, fundraising. And so Steve asked me to do that. And, if y'all want to let me know, I'm happy to give you the link so you can vote for me and donate to it. But there are also volunteer opportunities in other ways. And then, so I kind of run through all of those first 5 are kind of nonprofits in their own way. And I throw up South Bend Code School. Notre Dame, when they asked us to be on this panel, didn't realize that we already kind of work together. I have a second role at Gibson. I do have some client-facing responsibilities with some of our education clients. And since South Bend Code School works with schools and is educated-oriented, they've been an account of mine that I've been very, very fortunate to work with. And they are just one example of some of the really, really cool and interesting things that are happening in the community and organizations that are doing good things. And at Gibson, I get the chance to work with and help them achieve their goals, help them be insured, get the right amount of insurance, not too much, not too little, talk with them about risk in a way that it's not forefront on their minds. Even at Gibson, we focus on risk, but then when we're running our own business, sometimes we overlook the risks and getting people to pay attention to it. But it's put me in a position where I get to know a lot about South Bend Code School. I get to know what Alex and Alex are doing. I get to see, maybe not, sidelines, but at least front row, what's going on and see some of the cool creative things that are happening in the community. So all of this is a way, I mean, they asked me to tell my story, and this is kind of the best way I know how to tell my story from a giving back to the community standpoint. I work for an organization that is focused on growth. We are an employee stock ownership program, so a share price matters to us. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is help people in the community kind of achieve what they want to achieve, and not just through doing business with them, but also encouraging our employees to get out in the community, make a difference in the community, serve on boards. You guys are going to be, regardless of kind of what you do, if you are in marketing, if you're in accounting, if you're in finance, if you're in kind of a management role, all of that stuff is extremely valuable to nonprofits. Your expertise, the people that you're going to know, time, treasure, and talent are the things they talk about. Time you typically can get from your volunteers. Treasure, they don't tap me because I have access to big bank accounts. I don't necessarily know all the right people. I don't necessarily I can't write a lot of those checks. But that talent is going to be a key component for many of you. And some of you will be in a position to write large checks. Some of you will be in a position where it is more meaningful to kind of get out, roll your sleeves up, and coach a Girls on the Run team. But that time, talent, and treasure, one of the things that you're going to walk out of Notre Dame with, and any business experience that you have, you are going to learn a lot of good stuff that is going to be particularly valuable for nonprofits as service on their boards, on their committees. And so I tell my story the way I tell it, not because I think really if you look at those boards, I can tell you the boards in town that are the who's who. None of those are particularly who's who, which is fine with me because I think I get to make a little more of a difference. But whatever you do, you're going to have those opportunities to serve on boards. And I'll wrap up real quickly my portion just to kind of highlight as well. I started practice up in Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids is a larger town, 280,000 in town as a municipal center, city center, that whole larger area. They are over 1 million. They're similar to Columbus, not quite as large as Columbus, but from a cross section. They're also a place that people stay. So if you aren't from Grand Rapids, it's a little bit harder to kind of connect and get in. So it has both sides in that and me not being from there. Now, the law firm I worked at was helping to open some doors for me. But I can tell you, it is very different working in South Bend. I'm not from South Bend. You still get the question. I even ask people, where did you go to high school? Because I'm connected to South Bend schools. I coach shot put and discus at Riley High School here in town. And so I kind of want to pay attention to people who are from here. Where did you go to high school? My wife is from here too. So if they're around the same age as she is, I like to see if they might know her. But I wouldn't have had the 6 things that I have up there if I'd continued working in Grand Rapids. I would have belonged. I would have been on some boards. I would have done some things. Would have had those opportunities. But they were just so easy. They were so easy. As Alex said, people are willing to connect you here. And I don't think we're alone in this. We have a number of good mayors in the area. Mayor Pete gets a lot of the attention nationally. But you can meet him. It's not hard to meet him. You may not get anything from him because you have to go through the right channels to kind of get that kind of conversation. But you can meet him. He can know who you are. A lot of other people in the community, from a nonprofit standpoint, from the movers and shakers standpoint, you can meet them here. It's not that hard. You can be on boards. You can walk down to somebody's office and say, do you know anyone? I'm interested in this organization. And within 2 weeks be nominated to their board and sitting on their board. So regardless of kind of where you may end up, one of the plus sides for living in a community like South Bend is that you can sink your teeth into it. You can get to know people and you can make a real difference, and you can do it quickly. And whether that's through board service, volunteering, or, which I think is fantastic, is a business that is service-oriented, like the Code School. A for-profit business that, as Alex said, kind of blurs the lines. I think that is more of the norm. We're seeing a lot more of that. And I think in a lot of ways, your generation is going to drive that because you're not going to want to work for. You're going to ask questions of Gibson before you sit down and work for Gibson. It's not going to be about what are my benefits, how much money am I making. It's going to be about what's the difference you're making. How can I make a difference if I'm here? You know, what can I do here that allows me to change my community or have an impact on people? And that's going to be driven from you guys. So I've babbled, hopefully not too much. We've got about 15 minutes. And we'd like to take questions if people have them. I covered it all, or did I just bore you guys so much that you're not connecting? Yeah.
Alex and Alex, how did y'all come together to start the school? How did y'all find each other?
Yeah, so before we were working with kids, I'll go from my point of view. I guess Alex was already working at the Robinson Center. Do you guys all know the Robinson Community Learning Center here? You're all Notre Dame, yeah, kind of. So she was working there, and she was trying to establish some computer science education for kids, like she said, after she had sort of recognized that this is a field you can go into with sort of a portfolio of work, and you don't necessarily need a college degree to have a high impact career. And Chris and myself were looking to start more of a boot camp for adults, and South Bend as a community wasn't at the time quite willing to make that jump. We couldn't get enough commitments for interns or things like that in town. And so someone kind of off the cuff one day just said, well, would you do it for kids? We have a summer camp starting at Robinson Center. Would you meet with some people over there? And we said, yeah, we'd rather do something than talk about doing something. So we went to the first meeting, and Alex was there, and she kind of talked about her experience, and we had talked about ours, and at that point we were like, yeah, let's just team up and do this together. Anyone else?
Do you want to hear? They're engaged, by the way. Do you want to hear that story too?
Yes, we are engaged.
Sorry,
we don't follow.
Sorry, I couldn't.
We're not big on rules, like the way you're supposed to do things. Yeah, so we've also started a development company. We started that about 2 years ago, and we have clients in Austin, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, Chicago, Raleigh, Durham. So we're doing a lot of big projects with that. And we started that kind of alongside the code school. People say you're not supposed to start multiple businesses at once. We also built a fundraising platform. Actually, the Dancing with Our Stars event runs on our platform, GiveGrove. So we help nonprofits with their fundraising events and do that as well. So yeah, we don't like rules. If someone says you're not supposed to do something that way, we tend to do it just despite them.
So you've given us all lots of reasons to, for our students to either stay in South Bend or maybe move back someday. If you had to close, if you were in the meeting with one of our students and you were trying to convince them to stay in South Bend, like what are your top 3 reasons to stay in South Bend and do what you've done?
Oh man.
Anybody?
Well, I'll start just because what you guys say may be more relevant, and I recognize there's a little bit of an age gap between me and most of you in the room. I would say it's incredibly affordable. It is a big, small town, right? I mean, you get to know people. The affordability is key. And my commute is 25 minutes if I walk. So that's not a bad thing. I can tell you my brother, occasionally I'd call him and talk to him on his hour one-way commute. My sister-in-law, and this is kind of a relevant point. I know I'm not trying to go too far off tangent. My sister-in-law was an accounting major from Notre Dame. I think she started at Pricewaterhouse out in San Francisco, went in and had a position at Sierra Club, and then decided she wanted to continue her education. Went to Georgetown, got a master's in public policy. Yep, she's an underachiever. And then started working for the General Accountability Office. She transferred to their Chicago office. They lived in Oak Park, transferred back to DC. Her husband he's a Michigan grad. Don't all boo at once, but good guy in spite of it. And they've decided to move back to South Bend. And what's fascinating to me is Casey and I met over lunch because she wants to get more involved in the community. And I was asking kind of what are some of the things she's done. She hasn't done anything. She really hasn't done anything from a community standpoint, other than to the extent it was related to her kid's school. And And that's where, I mean, she had a very good job from a status standpoint. She did rub shoulders with Congress people. She was, healthcare policy is her specialty. But that other part of her life was not really kind of fulfilled or meaningful. And so I think that would be one of my top three as well, is that really, when I say sink your teeth into a community, I mean, you can do some really cool stuff, you can do it quickly, and it can have a major impact here. And people will notice, and they will care, and they will appreciate that you're doing it. So I'll let you guys take your three too.
I mean, I feel like the main thing is impact to me, of that, like, if you have an idea, you can try it here, even while you're a student. I'd use that time while you are here of not, just being on campus, but being able to go out and try whatever idea that it is of networking, whether it's starting a business, like all of those kinds of things, is the opportunity. It's just so easy to be able to grab, that I would just go after that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if, you can't sell someone an idea that they're not willing to accept. So if anyone's like bound and determined to go work for a major corporation in a big city, and that's the life path you want, that's the life path you want. If you want to make a difference and try something that's yours, South Bend is probably the best community or community profile in the world to go try to do something like that. I mean, Code School is completely bootstrapped. Our two other businesses are completely bootstrapped. We didn't go out and raise like a Series A round of seed funding for whatever, $1 million. Like, we go and talk about entrepreneurship sometimes, and I think like everyone expects us to come in and be like, yeah, like we raised $1 million, Series A, all these other entrepreneurial buzzwords, and then like hop in our Teslas and drive away. And that never happens, right? Like, we own 100% of Code School and our business. Like, that is all ours. We'll have grown to 3 additional cities by the end of this calendar year. That's 100% our company. We have, like, at this point, we've had great success, and we've demonstrated success in this city, and people have come to us and said, can I invest in this? And so far, we've told them no. But I mean, like, if that's the route you want to go, you can get stuff done here, right? Like, it's not hard to go and get people to want to try whatever you're selling, You can go very easily to Gibson Insurance, like walk the 25 minutes to Gibson Insurance and say, hey, Brian, I need a policy because we work with kids and I'm scared to death that one of them is going to get hurt in our facility. And I have no idea even where to begin or how much this is going to cost or how this even looks. And Brian will be like, yeah, no problem, I got you. And also, have you talked to the Education Foundation? Like, what other city is that going to happen in? Maybe a lot, I don't know. You guys tell me. But it happens here.
Yeah, Brian, why don't you talk about a couple of things here? One is that the Center for the Homeless has become a model for the country in many different ways. And then the other issue would be, or the other topic would be the leadership, 40 under 40 type thing.
Yeah, so Center for the Homeless is one of those. The history of it, it started, I don't know exactly how many years ago, but a very bad storm, and there were a number of people that were homeless and needed a place to stay because one of the shelters had closed or it had a fire, and so they needed, and the community kind of banded together and found them some immediate space, but then determined that they needed more. Center for the Homeless has programming around, so they have facilities for stay. They have a veterans facility as well. They do have requirements, so you can't just kind of, you have to kind of show that you're clean, you're not using from a drug standpoint, that type of thing, because they want people who are kind of committed if they're going to invest that. They'll work as well with very short term, so if it's a particularly cold day, they'll work to create shelter space and that type of thing. But just that kind of combination, that community effort of seeing the community band together for folks that aren't necessarily going to vote for anybody, aren't necessarily going to frequent their businesses or anything like that. And that model kind of continues. Notre Dame's been very involved in the Center for the Homeless as well, but it has become a national model. They have their own facility, a couple of facilities. It includes as well kind of a medical clinic that serves the more transient population, that type of thing. And now I'm drawing a blank on the second question again.
40 under 40.
Oh, the 40 under 40. So one of the other things that happens, many communities have, so they'll recognize 40 under 40. These are they're looking for people that are making a difference in the community, have made an impact already, are people to watch, that type of thing. And the chamber, along with the newspapers and the Elkhart Chamber as well, so it's a little bit more regional. Every year we'll name 40 community leaders who are under the age of 40 and recognize them for the different work that they're doing. And again, I mean, I was honored to be named one of those at a point in time, and I'm hesitant to say much about it, because for me that's nice, but that's not why I'm doing any of this stuff. But that recognition, the fact that I know if I were in Grand Rapids, that probably wouldn't have been something that would have been available to me. Similarly in Chicago, or a larger city like that, I think I would have done very good work where I was. But to have that, it's not meaningless to have the community kind of recognize the work you do. And Ken, I think that's just an example of how this type of community, this size of community, you know, not just that you can have an impact, but people will recognize the impact you're having. And then they will come to you and ask you to serve on panels like this, and you wonder, why are you asking me? Okay, I'll do the best I can. And those are just opportunities I wouldn't have anywhere else. So, yeah. You guys will probably get named soon enough on that if you haven't already.
So you talked about how some of the students you work with have started going to college and everything. Is the South Bend Code School something that you were thinking about expanding outside of, you know, kind of the Indiana area? And if so, have any of the students like showed interest in wanting to come back and kind of help you expand what you have already?
Yeah, so when we first started, we started getting calls from cities that were out of state, but we were just getting started. We weren't making any money yet, so we wanted to kind of figure out how to do all of this. And so now we've started revisiting some of those conversations, so I don't think that it's a long way off. But then even in terms of like students' commitment to like the mission of coming back and being able to participate and stuff, we've seen that happen too. We have one student in particular who she landed a tech internship and is now teaching for us some of the classes that she took. So that's been pretty awesome watching that happen. Yeah.
And I'll highlight too, I mean, you guys could have the success you're having in Chicago, but would it be as recognizable, right? I mean, if you were Chicago Code School, does that, because I can tell you, the fact that when I talked to Alex, she said that they're keeping the name South Bend Code School. They're going to go to Fort Wayne, but it's still South Bend Code School. If they go to Chicago, it's still going to be South Bend Code School. And if you live in this community, I was a Notre Dame student once, and even though I grew up in St. Joe, I didn't venture into South Bend that much and didn't know that much about it. And it's pretty easy to come back briefly and talk about what an awful place it is. But when you live here, you develop this real sense of pride. So when you see somebody grab the name and run with it, like South Bend Code School, it matters. There's a lot of pride around that type of thing. So same type of thing. You know, in Chicago, you're competing with every other sports team that's named Chicago something.
So I really think this is a cool program that make a lot of like influences on the kids. I just wonder, when you first started the program, have you faced any kind of difficulties or like failures that make you kind of learn from it and grow better?
Yes.
So,
So many.
More than we can account for here.
Yeah.
I mean, starting your business comes with a lot of failure. Just a ton of it. I can't even answer that question. There's so many things popping up in my head. I think like one of the big ones we dealt with, the biggest one we dealt with out of the gate was the first 3 programs we did were all program partnerships. So we partnered with another organization to run our program, and either partway through or directly after our program was over, the leadership at all of those organizations changed. And so our sales cycle on getting back into that facility started all over again, and we were averaging a 4-month sales cycle. So we had no continuity in our programming. People would be like, where's the next program? And we'd be like, great question. If you know of a place, let us know. So we spent the whole summer of 2016 with our 5 student interns at the time. I think majority of them were Notre Dame students. And so we got our 5 student interns summer of 2016, sat all of them in a room and said, all right, here's the deal. you all just got promoted from interns. You now have to help us roll an open enrollment program by the fall of 2016, or else our company is going to die. And we put that weight on Notre Dame sophomore and higher's shoulders, right? And they totally succeeded with us and helped us carry the whole thing across the finish line. We now have a successful scholarship fund. We run after-school programming. Anyone can apply. We run spring, summer, and fall programs. You know, we've got people making donations and gifts to the scholarship fund. We've got grant dollars coming into the scholarship fund. We can guarantee that there's funding and programming available for students of all types, genders, ethnicities, backgrounds, whatever it is. So, I mean, that was like the big hurdle early on. But I mean, you know, everything from what are we going to do about insurance to we've got our first employees, how do we run payroll, to, you know, oh man, we made way more money in the first year than we thought we were going to, and now we're going to have to pay a lot of taxes. So, you know, like all of those things. Yeah. So, you know, cash flow. So yeah, but I mean, things like that. How do you deal with kids' parents not responding? You know, how do you deal with getting locked in your classroom with 20 kids and no one knows how to get the door open for you? Those
That happened last night.
Thank you so much to our speakers. Please join me in thanking them for their time.